Ever dig through your wallet after buying a coffee just to find a pile of change weighing you down?
Yeah, the worst.
Right. Well, that's kind of what we're dealing with in Bitcoin, except we call it UTXOs.
And trust me, they can be way more confusing than loose change.
Oh, absolutely. So today we're going to break it all down, figure out what UTXOs are, why they even matter, and how to wrangle them like a pro. I'm joined by expert's name, who knows this stuff inside and out.
Always happy to dive into the weeds on this one. UTXOs are, well, they're kind of the unsung heroes of Bitcoin.
Our source calls them unspent transaction outputs, which honestly doesn't clear things up much for me.
It's a mouthful, right? Think of it this way. When you picture a Bitcoin wallet, most people imagine it like one big account, yeah.
Right, makes sense to me.
But it's more like, remember that pile of change we talked about? UTXOs are kind of like that. Each one is a leftover piece of Bitcoin from your past transactions, just waiting to be spent.
Okay, so like having a bunch of different bills instead of just like one big wad of cash.
Exactly. Each with its own value, ready to be used.
Gotcha. But let's be real. Why should the average person even care about this?
Because UTXOs are actually the engine that keeps Bitcoin running smoothly. They're all about efficiency, security, and scalability.
All right, big words, but I see those in our source material too. Break them down for me.
Okay, so efficiency. Imagine you're at a store, ready to pay, but your digital wallet has to scan through every single Bitcoin transaction ever made just to make sure you've got enough to cover your purchase.
Oh man, that'd be a nightmare.
Total chaos. But UTXOs swoop in and basically create a shortcut so transactions are like lightning fast.
So they're like, what do they call them in libraries, those little Dewey Decimal things?
Kind of like a filing system that makes everything super efficient. Now, for security, think about what would happen if someone could spend the same Bitcoin twice.
Like just keep making copies of the same $5 bill, the whole system would fall apart.
Exactly. UTXOs prevent that whole mess by making sure each piece of Bitcoin can only be spent once. It's like a built-in fraud detection system.
Pretty smart.
And then there's scalability, which is all about Bitcoin being able to handle more and more transactions as it grows, right? UTXOs help manage that by breaking things down into smaller, easier to manage pieces. Imagine trying to ship a giant container versus a bunch of smaller packages.
The way easier to handle the smaller stuff.
Exactly. That's what UTXOs do for Bitcoin.
So how do we keep track of all these little pieces? I see our source talking about something called consolidation.
Yeah. Basically, taking all those small UTXOs and combining them into fewer, larger ones, just like exchanging a pile of coins for a couple of bills, makes everything cleaner.
Okay, sounds pretty convenient. What do we gain by doing that?
Well, first off, lower transaction fees. Fewer, larger transactions mean it costs less to move your Bitcoin around. And then there's the simplicity of managing your wallet. Would you rather keep track of 1,000,000 pennies or $100?
$100 for sure.
Just makes life easier.
Sounds like a no-brainer so far. Are there any downsides to this whole consolidation thing?
There are always trade-offs, right? One thing our source mentions is privacy.
Oh, how so?
When you consolidate UTXOs, you might be accidentally linking different addresses you've used before, and that could give someone a clearer picture of your transaction history. So there are definitely some privacy implications to consider.
Ah, so it's kind of a trade-off, convenience versus keeping your Bitcoin dealings on the down low.
You got it. Plus, consolidating those super tiny UTXOs sometimes costs more in fees than it's worth, especially if you're dealing with just a few cents worth of Bitcoin.
Good point. Our source also mentions some tools for managing all this, like Liquid, Aqua Wallet, and Sid Swap. What can you tell us about those?
I love that these tools are popping up because it shows people are serious about managing their UTXOs. Liquid is awesome for faster transactions. Aqua Wallet is all about taking control of your Bitcoin keys. And Sid Swap is great for like trading directly with other folks.
That's that self-custody thing everyone's talking about, right?
Exactly. The main thing is take some time, research these tools, figure out which one aligns with, what you're trying to achieve with your Bitcoin.
Solid advice. So what's the big takeaway for our listeners today? What should they be doing with this information?
If you're into Bitcoin, especially if you're holding on to it yourself, take a look inside your digital wallet. See if you've got a ton of these tiny UTXOs hanging around, and think about if consolidating them makes sense. Just keep in mind the privacy aspect.
The privacy piece is definitely food for thought.
Totally. It's all about finding that balance, between ease of use and maintaining your privacy.
Right. So here's a question for everyone listening. If consolidating your UTXOs could potentially compromise privacy, is it always the best move? Are there situations where keeping things separate, even if it's a little more work to manage, might actually be the smarter play? That's something to ponder. But that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the world of UTXOs. We hope you found it useful. Until next time.